It developed an economic and social relief plan to drive the city's economy recovery, which sought to restart all our sectors of the economy that were severely affected by COVID-19, including tourism, construction, and the manufacturing sector. Through this economic recovery plan, Honorable Minister, we have seen more investors committing to retain and expand their investment in our city. Currently, the city is implementing the following catalytic projects: Point Waterfront, Rivertown Precinct Upgrade, Chongweni Mixed Use Development, Dumsan-Makai Development, Midway Crossing Mall, Conopia, Dube Trade Port, Keystone, Clarewood Logistic, Central Park, Virginia Airport, Durban Film City, Cattle Ridge Dry Port, Durban Iconic Tower, Ilovo Auto Supply Park. Honorable Minister and our guest, the private developers who are proposing to build a dry port at Cattle Ridge requires SANRAL to construct a new interchange onto the N3. The interchange will not only allow the dry port to be built, but will also unlock substantial industrial land which will support the industrialization objectives of the National Economic Recovery Plan. In Chongweni, Tongat Hulet wants to build a new commercial and light industrial node. However, it also requires SANRAL and the Provincial Department of Transport to budget for an upgrade of the interchange in the area. The Automotive Supply Park, which I've also listed as the catalytic projects in the pipeline, requires bulk infrastructure in the form of an interchange. They also require the Department of Trade and Industry to allocate budget for bulk infrastructure in terms of the Special Economic Zone program. This project is critical in growing the automotive industry and Toyota in our municipality. We must indicate, Honorable Minister, that these projects will play a critical role not only in the development of our city, but also of our neighboring districts. Therefore, we request the immediate intervention of our political champions and the Minister to unlock these projects. On fighting against crime and the crime, Honorable Program Director, fighting crime and crime is critical in creating a positive investor climate. And as a city, we are implementing tough measures to eradicate crime and crime in the city. As part of our inner city regeneration program, we have identified bad buildings for renovation and repurposing for affordable accommodation, because we intend bringing more than 400,000 people to reside within the CBD. Through our Safer Cities program, we are also accelerating the implementation of plans to create a safe living environment for all our citizens. Last week, we launched our community safety forums and local drug action committees, which will work closely with the police to prevent crime in our city. Our view is that fighting crime is a collective responsibility. Therefore, communities, through their crime-fighting structures, are instrumental in combating crime. We are also pleased to report that the private sector is coming on board and collaborating with us by investing in latest technological tools to deal with crime in our city. In closing, we must reiterate our commitment to clean and accountable government. As the city, we continue to obtain an unqualified audit opinion. To address the issues that have been raised by Auditor General, the city has developed a turnaround plan which includes the following: early warning system to detect irregular expenditure, apply consequence management on officials implicated in wrongdoing, weekly meetings with the senior management to assess the progress on the implementation of our plans, reduce over-reliance on consultants and develop solid and credible contract management system. We boast with 128 engineers in the city. So therefore, that should work on our advantage as a city to improve the manner in which we deliver services to our people. Appointment of supply chain management specialists in all line function departments. The leadership is getting monthly reports on MFMA violations and take actions thereof. Program Director, let me also take this opportunity to report that we are one of the metros that has a very low vacancy rate. Particularly at senior management level, all vacant posts at top management level, the city manager and the DCMs have been filled. Our oversight committees, including Section 80 committees and Section 79 statutory committees, are functional and meetings are held as scheduled. We have also finalized the skills audit and submitted the report to COCTA for further verification. Honorable Minister, we have no doubt that we still have a long way to go to achieve a better life for all our residents in eThekwini, and we can only achieve this goal if we work together as social partners and different spheres of government. The district development model provides us a platform to combine resources and work together towards the implementation of a single plan to eradicate the triple threat of poverty, unemployment, and inequalities. I therefore welcome you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Your Worship, Councillor Kaunda. Ladies and gentlemen, at a time where we'll have engagements and reflections, you will also get an opportunity to engage with the presentation as made by Comrade Kaunda. We'll now move to the Ministerial Address, and I will not try, Minister, to run a biography for you, because any self-respecting citizen will know who is Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma. So I will save time and request you, Minister, to then come on stage and address us. If we can all rise and welcome the Minister.
Thank you very much, Program Director. And thank you to His Worship the Mayor for the presentation, and I also like to acknowledge the Speaker. But I would like to ask you to allow me to stand on the protocol that was so well elaborated and observed by the Mayor in the interest of time. It's not out of disrespect. It is indeed a pleasure for me to be back here in eThekwini Metro in the context of the district development model, which was launched just a year ago as part of the 3 pilot sites. But of course, when we launched, none of us would have thought that today we would meet under the conditions we're meeting under in the throes of coronavirus disease. Of course, this is the worst health pandemic we've had since the Spanish flu in 1918, which, by the way, left more than 300,000 South Africans dead. COVID-19 arrived on our shores on the 5th of March, and soon we realized the numbers were increasing very fast, 2 to 3 days, doubling every day, 2 to 3 days. So we had to take drastic measures to avoid history repeating itself. And we embarked on some of the time-tested measures, which were not uniquely South African. As you can see, even then in 1918, they were wearing masks, as you can see on that picture. In fact, they were more drastic. You see on the last person there, it says, wear a mask or go to jail. At least we haven't reached that point ourselves. We also made sure that people who were infected were isolated and contacts were quarantined. As you can see, quarantine was there in 1918. And even the closure of the things that were closed, it's not new. The schools, as you can see in that public notice, that schools, public and private churches, theaters, movies, pictures, halls, lodges, and pretty much everything had to be closed. So what we did has been done before. But in our case, because of our unique situation, we had to just lock down hard for a short while and then gradually open up the economy so that we can balance saving lives and livelihoods. And of course, from the 1st of September, the country has moved to level 1, which means the economy is almost completely open, with very few exceptions. But the risk of the virus has not decreased. In fact, if anything, it has increased the risk because more people are moving, more people are meeting in groups. So it means because the virus only moves when people move. So it means that the risk is higher, and with the festive season approaching, I think it's very important for us to ensure, as the program director said, that we keep to the health protocols: masks, washing of hands, sanitizing, social distancing, and just not making sure that we don't organize big crowds, because those will spread the virus very fast. And we must remember that other countries in the world are already having a second surge, which is higher in most of them than the first surge. We can't afford that here in South Africa. So we hope that even if we do have a second surge, it won't be as bad as the first one. Because remember, we were having 500 infections per hour at some stage. And we were having 13,000 infections in one day. We don't want to get there, but it's all in our hands, collectively. And we must remember, I'm not safe until you are. And you are not safe until I am. So we must all collectively take responsibility. Of course, COVID, unfortunately, is not just a health pandemic, but it's also an economic crisis that has depressed the global economy. And South Africa has been severely affected because our economy wasn't doing well even before COVID. And then COVID just made it worse. But at the time we launched the DDM, we were very hopeful that it will also assist us to contribute to economic growth at the time. But as the mayor has also said, COVID has actually further deepened the already existing challenges. And these challenges, amongst them, is hunger. We've seen how people just needed food. Poverty, unemployment, of course, inequality has widened. The digital divide, we saw poor kids couldn't continue learning during the lockdown, whilst rich kids who have ICT infrastructure were able to continue learning, and now they are taking exams. They are writing the same paper, those who continued learning and those who couldn't. The paper is the same. So you can see already that that divide is a problem. And some people didn't have access to basic services like even water, healthcare. And this apartheid special planning became very obvious when people had to get into buses to go and do grocery shopping. Countries don't do that. You do your grocery in your neighborhood. But in this country, you have to actually get into a taxi to go and do shopping somewhere else. Landlessness was also exacerbated. We saw people either were removed from the land or were invading land. The global economy is expected to contract by 4.9% in 2020. Of course, the negative impact in the first half of 2020 implies that economies are well below their potential growth and what they had expected. And unemployment is set to rise in 2020 going into 2021. In South Africa, we've seen how our economy has contracted, our GDP has contracted over the 3 quarters, and we are in a recession. Unemployment has risen, and in fact, we have recorded the highest unemployment rate since 2008. But of course, there are some positive developments in the economy. We've seen household spending on communication growing because of COVID, and everybody had to, most people had to work remotely. And so we saw an increase there. Agriculture showed a strong growth because agriculture, like water, like oxygen, provides the energy that human beings need. Mining and manufacturing, they are back at work. So we hope that they will also start growing again. But with the district model, so where are we and where are we going? Just to remind ourselves what the Constitution says about the district development model without calling it the district development model. The Constitution says that local government must provide services in a manner that promotes social and economic development, promotes safe and healthy environment, and encourage the involvement of people. It must administer the budget and plan priorities to basic needs, promote social and economic development of communities, and of course participate in national and provincial programs. But because it's so important, the Constitution, without calling it a district development model, it says national and provincial governments must strengthen the capacity of municipalities so that they can perform their functions. That's precisely what the district development model is trying to do. But not only government, but all stakeholders should work together. And of course, the first document that we went to government with in '94 also spoke of a coordinated and coherent development strategy. It talked about addressing issues of unemployment and building the economy. And whilst we build the economy, it must also relate to meeting basic needs. It also says we must seek to help people generate economic wealth in their chosen communities. So it's not expected that we should get people from the rural areas to come to the city, from other districts to come to the metro, and people from here to go to Gauteng or Cape Town, because we are not providing economic activities in their neighborhood, and they are not allowing them to create wealth in their own communities. But of course, if we don't do that, people leave and come to the cities. The city will never reach its full potential if it has to be dealing with emergencies of people who are arriving, who need shelter, who need water, who need electricity, schooling, and all that, because they can't have it in their own districts. So people should come to the city out of choice, not out of desperation. So it's important that the district development model ensures that that happens. And of course, as the mayor said, for that to happen, we need to have a properly functioning metro, properly functioning municipalities, and if we take the 4 main indicators, There must be proper governance. There must be appropriate political, administrative, and business interface. There should be proper oversight and consequence management. In some instances, we find that governance is not good. There is political infighting. There is political interference in the administration, and it becomes a problem, and there is no consequence management. We also need an administration that has its vacancies filled. I'm happy that eThekwini has the major vacancies filled, because we see that as a weakness in many municipalities. Lots of critical positions are not filled. If they do get filled, it takes a long time, and sometimes there's also interference in the way they are filled, and they are not necessarily filled with the people with the requisite skills and experience. And of course, sometimes also that leads to corruption, and corruption, as we know, erodes the trust between government and the people, but it also denies the citizens the resources that should be used for their benefit. Also need good financial management. It's good eThekwini is getting unqualified audits. Next time it must be a clean audit. You're better than COGTA. When I arrived, the COGTA for 2 years running was getting a disclaimer. And I was saying, what am I going to say to the municipalities? Because when I talk to them, they'll just say, well, start with your own house. So I hope this time it will be difficult to get an unqualified audit, but I'm sure we will move from disclaimers, at least in the 9 months that we've been there. So financial management is very important, and irregular, unauthorized, fruitless expenditure should be avoided as much as possible. Some municipalities, but not maybe the metro, use consultants, but they have nothing to show for it. And also unfunded budgets. But I won't go into that because eThekwini is not so much in that category. But having said all this, government cannot achieve this constitutional imperative without working with business and other stakeholders. Business and entrepreneurs must play a central role in the fulfillment of the constitutional imperative, especially the social and economic development. And of course, government in all spheres must work hand in hand with business to rebuild the economy. And that slide is just showing how the relationships, the next slide will show how the relationships should be. In the municipality, we want to see where the political leadership starts and ends. It shouldn't be a mix. In some of the municipalities, you can't tell who's the administrator, who's political. And in others, you can't even tell who's business. It's all one scrambled egg. And there's inappropriate interface between business and the administration, inappropriate interface between political and administration. And of course, when things are go like that, then the citizens suffer. There is no proper service delivery because people are fighting for the resources that are not theirs. So we want to keep this clean. Business must be there, but working with us, administration and the political leadership must be together, but you must be able to distinguish. So, but I think we must also use COVID to assist us to reset the economic pattern. We must build an economy that is more inclusive. At the moment, as the mayor said, it's not. Must expand access to infrastructure, including communication infrastructure. The digital divide must be closed. We must make sure that the services are delivered and we accelerate the socio-economic transformation. Government, business, and society has proven during the pandemic that we can work together on a common purpose. And therefore, we must translate the lessons we have learned from COVID to the real life, to the building of the economy, development of our communities, and make sure that we develop equal, prosperous, resilient, sustainable, climate-smart communities by radically transforming our economy, expanding the industrial base. We must do more to ensure the establishment and sustainability of cooperatives and small business. And actually, it is the small and medium enterprises that create jobs. And so we need to expand that. We must bring in new people, we must bring in women, youth, so that they can be the drivers of the cultural, social, and economic development of our country. And even our budgets must be gender responsive. We must know how much money we are spending to empower women. And businesses must also ensure that there are women, not only in their management, because we know that businesses that have more women in their management are more competitive than those who do not. It's a fact. So it's not charity. It's for improving your bottom line. You must get more women. We must also get women-owned companies. We must also really empower women because, again, when women have resources, there's research that shows if you give 100 rands to a man and a woman, the man will spend a very big amount of that 100 rand in the family. He'll spend 30% of it, 30 cents. But the woman will spend 70% of that on the family. 70%. So the families and communities are better off when the resources are also given to women. And of course, it's their right, and also they are the majority in this country and in the world. And by the way, they also produce the other half. So what more do you want? You must empower women. Of course, unless we do that, our economy will not grow to its full potential. If we are working at half capacity, leaving out half the talents, then we will not get there. Young people, they have the energy, they have the vitality, so we need to bring them in. They also must begin to shape the future that they are inheriting now, so they must be active now. Of course, all this will happen if government works hand in hand with all the stakeholders. All hands must be on deck, whether it's traditional leaders, business is central in many areas, civil society, community organization, the workers, youth, women, and the district development seeks to bring everybody together. Not only to be told what to do, but to say what needs to be done, and then to do it together. We seek to strengthen the government machinery by improving coordination between the three spheres of government and all the stakeholders. Because nobody has the monopoly of ideas, so we also need to get ideas from everyone. We just want to share some of the lessons from China. The Chinese, when they want to develop an area, they ask 3 questions. What is the endowment of this area? What does it have? And what is the comparative advantage? And then how do we optimize the industrial structure? And that's where also government comes in. And we massify and optimize the industrial structure, develop skills, master plan that will drive the skills revolution, because without skills, really, the economy won't grow. If I were to digress a bit, the reason BRIC was called BRIC was because they were looking at which countries are going to drive the economy in this century. And they came to 4 countries, which were the BRIC countries. And then they said, okay, after the 4, who are the others? They called it the next 11. And they had the next 11. And unfortunately, South Africa was not in the first 4 and was not in the next 11. In Africa, Egypt and Nigeria were in the next 11. So at the time, I was the Minister of Foreign Affairs, now it's DICO. I went to them and I said, can you explain to me, because South Africa is the most advanced economy, infrastructure, you know everything. Why is it not in the first 4? Why is it not in the next 11? They said it's simple. South Africa does not have the skills. Egypt and Nigeria have the depth and the breadth of skills, and they will overtake your economy just on the skills. So it's very important for us. Of course, now we're in BRICS, not because we've overcome that. It's a political arrangement. But we still need to ensure that we have this skills revolution. Whether you look at engineers per capita, we are way below. It doesn't matter which area you look at, we are way below in terms of skills. So our economy will never reach its full potential without those skills. And I think we shouldn't just leave it to the principal here. We should all pitch in. I know some of the companies, they do training and skilling, but not sufficiently. Some don't. And we should really, and it's all the skills from engineering right down to artisans. Mayor, I once talked to some of the construction businesses, and I said, why is there a complaint that you don't hire South Africans in your especially those who were building? And they said to me, you know, you South Africans do not understand that everything you do in building a house or an office or whatever is a skill, needs a skill. You think we can take people from the street to come and plaster. You think we can take people from the street to come and paint or tile or put a ceiling. Say, each and every one of those things are a skill, they are trained. Our neighbors understand that. The Mozambicans train their people, the Zimbabweans, the Malawians, and so on. They train their people in all those specialized skills. But South Africans think they can just walk in and say, oh, I can paint. So I think when we say skills, it must be skills at all levels so that our people can then be able to get employment, but also create employment. And of course, the metro can never reach its full potential unless other districts in the province also develop. But you can also plan for the metro alone without planning for the province and national. So we have to link all that, and the markets, you have to link to SADC, to the continent, and to the global markets. And with the continental free trade, we have a big opportunity. Now, going back to the Chinese and their industrial transformation, they emphasize these 6 steps. You must choose the right targets. You must remove the binding constraints, which, if it's government, those binding constraints should be removed, like you were saying about the ports and so on. Attract global investors. Scale up self-discoveries. In South Africa, lots of people innovate, but we don't scale those innovations up. And then they end up being taken elsewhere. We must recognize also the power of industrial parks or special economic zones, and we must provide limited incentives to the right industries. Of course, government, the president has appointed political champions for every district. Now there is a minister or a deputy minister who's a champion, and there's an MEC who's a champion. As we can see, our MEC here for education is the champion for eThekwini. On Thursday, we had the 2 champions, the deputy ministers were also here. And of course, we must have district forums that have all the stakeholders in them. And it's also important that we work closely with all the 3 spheres, but we must also work with others. We must make sure that there are research and development institutions that we work with. There are many of them, but I'll just mention CSIR, the academic institutions. There are some industrial bodies that also do that. Must have partnerships. We must then also monitor and evaluate. And eventually, we must ensure that we have a plan that everybody understands, and there is capacity and capability. Of course, we also must do away with the silos, and this will assist us to narrow the gap, the distance between the government and the people, not just the voters, but all the sectors as well. And that you must deliver integrated services, must be gender inclusive, maximize impact by aligning resources, facilitate local economic development. This is very important, and sustainable development, accelerate initiatives to promote poverty eradication, unemployment, and inequality. Of course, to recover the economy, the country must focus on the health of every district, not just the 3. And the metro and its abilities to sustain business, we need to have comprehensive understanding of every district. Ensure that we are starting businesses that respond directly to the needs and endowments and comparative advantage of a particular district. In eThekwini, eThekwini is very unique because we always talk about eThekwini as though we only have an urban part. Some people forget that there is a big rural part in eThekwini. And so we must make sure that all our programs have both the rural and urban and township footprint. And of course, the eThekwini holds almost 1/3 of the population of KZN. So it's a very important place. And it is the economic hub of KZN. So it's important not only for abantu baseThekwini, it's important for the province and for national as well. And so Itegu must also realize that it must contribute to the development of the neighboring districts. It's got lots of endowments, which you all know. I will not read through them, except that its most precious resource, like anywhere else, is its people. So we must invest in the people. Because people will figure out what to do if we have invested in their education, in their skills, in their health, and in their basic needs. Transport, logistics, I'll stress the economy, because the ocean economy, because the ocean is a huge economic frontier, which we really haven't tapped, as far as I'm concerned. Cultural tourism, floating coastal tourism, entertainment industry. We have not developed the communal land, agriculture, agro-processing. We used to be the biggest and busiest harbor, but to our disappointment, we've been told we're now number 3 on the continent. We must work hard to regain our position of number 1. Our comparative advantage is our people, our fertile land, our potential for tourism. I mean, the filming industry, sometimes they say to us, but why does Durban not have a developed filming industry? Because they want to come here and film. They go to Cape Town, which is good, but they also want to come here. We have everything they need. We just need to develop that industry. Manufacturing, of course, ICT, and many others. So there are obviously huge economic opportunities that we have not been able to exploit. And I want to also hear from you, but we need to exploit those opportunities. When we were here last time, you raised a number of issues that you wanted government to work with you to unlock. The mayor has responded to them, so I won't go into mentioning which ones were they. And he has also said what has been done. On Thursday, we had somebody from the port who explained what they were doing at the port. But obviously, there's still a lot more to be done. But what would be interesting today is to hear from your own perspective how far that has gone, how far we've gone in trying to address some of the issues you had raised. But more importantly, we want to also hear from you how we're going to develop new enterprises, how we're going to grow existing businesses, how we're going to increase manufacturing, and how we're going to take advantage of the ocean economy. We want to hear that from you, and you can also tell us what we should do, what you will do. So I would really look forward to hearing from you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Honorable Minister. We're now at a stage where we'll have reflections from business stakeholders. Now, I've been given a list of colleagues who would speak on behalf of their organizations. And having said that, we may at the end probably allow any other hand that would want to engage both the presentation by the minister and that one which was rendered by the mayor at the beginning. So I will just call the colleagues whose list have been sent to me. From the Growth Coalition, we have Baba Moses Tembe. I'm told he will be speaking on behalf of the Growth Coalition. You can come this side, Bab Tembe. Bab Tembe will be followed by Nigel Watt from DCC. Then I will call other colleagues as we move.
Thank you, Mshengo. As Minister said, I will actually stand by the protocols that have been eloquently observed. We, as business, we definitely welcome the visit by the Honorable Minister of Culture, Dr. Nkosazana Zuma. Mshengu, whilst we were not formally informed that we will be speaking, as I was sitting down, I was making a few notes, appreciating the eloquent and elaborate remarks and speech that was made by the minister. I want to kick off by saying eThekwini is in the pole position to become a model city in South Africa. And we see the application of the district development model as an appropriate instrument to realize that dream. One of the things we celebrate about the advent of COVID-19 was that it actually brought us together. eThekwini has always enjoyed a very good, sound relationship with business and other stakeholders. I'm not going to go into the detail of the initiatives that we established during COVID-19, including the economic recovery plan and the structures we actually put in place to make sure that it happens. So, Minister, you can go back knowing that stakeholders in eThekwini, that is the municipality, business, civil society, and the unions work hand in hand, which makes a huge difference in terms of ensuring the good things that you spoke about earlier. Having said that, it really does not mean that we do not have our own challenges as the city and as the province. One of the issues I've raised and raised quite vociferously with the city and the province, as it were, is our inability to manage by objectives or targets and timelines. We have given good presentations this morning, and we continue to give presentations in terms of our plans, what we want to achieve, but we never put clearly articulated targets and timelines. So the issue of management by objectives and timelines become a challenge for us. We do have projects, for example, which we've presented to the city, to the province, and some to the country. And we know that there is work that is being done towards achieving those, but because we never put time frames, timelines, we suffer from a disease I call excusitis, where people have got excuses all the time why something could not be achieved on a particular date. One of the qualities that Chinese people pride themselves of, when the president visits a district, he would say, in 12 months' time, I want to see 1 million houses built. He will have a date. He will be coming to launch those 1 million houses, and the date will be cast in stone, and the president will be there, either to launch those houses built or to fire a person who did not build them. So I really would like to impress upon us all to realize, to respect that and ensure that when a target has been put in place, it must be met, and somebody has to take a fall for that. Would also like to comment on the issue of capacity building and resources. A partnership is also about making it a point that we specialize in the areas where we're strong as partners. We see sometimes a lack of coordination between what the city ought to be doing and what business ought to be doing, especially in the provision, or rather, in the optimum utilization of resources that are quite scarce, especially given the COVID-19. I'll give an example of the development, for example, of some of the inner city projects. As business, we are of the view that the city shouldn't be, rather, should be saving money, employing some of the consultants and the infrastructure projects in terms of infrastructure. In the business sector, we do have people in place and actually have got resources to put the money into that infrastructure. So what delays the projects, you are all out trying to build that capacity which is not there. You've got to go back to the city on that fiscals, which is challenged right now, to get the 300, 400, 500 million rand that should be put on parking, which invariably will actually put down some of it because it's made without taking into account the top structures which are driven by the business imperatives. We really think that as a city, for example, you need to be saying you want to develop this piece of land within the city. We are looking for 100,000 low-cost houses there. You are looking for 100,000 gap housing. You are looking to house the library there. You are looking for, you need to be to regulate, give us imperatives, than spending 2-3 years doing the planning. That as business we can actually do better and put money into it. If you do that, giving us the imperatives and openly go out on a public call, we are able to respond quickly. In a year's time or so, you could have a project, then delay things for 3-4 years. 4 years down the line, having made a presentation of what we can do as business, it hasn't happened, and we have lost potential earnings in terms of rates and taxes. While still on the issue of capacity building and optimum utilization of resources, the minister raised a critical issue of skills. If you really go around the world and see many countries, I can talk about Singapore, 20, 30, maybe 30, 40 years, which did not have resources, which did not have much of what we've got, how they've managed to change the country around. Those countries were changed around basically on the back of the human capital, on the back of the skills. We have realized as business that sometimes we rush to saying government or municipalities are not performing well, and are not performing well, judging it. We go to the extent of judging it and say, look, it's corruption and all of that. Whilst corruption might be an issue, but we have realized that the shortage of skills in that sector is a huge challenge. So you end up with people who decide not to act because they really don't know how to implement appropriately. So the issue of skills is a big issue. I mean, today we are here talking about the issue of skills. I doubt if the Vice Rector, Mr. Mthembu, of the DUT, which is a university of technology, is actually here to hear us talking about the importance of skills development and ensuring that his university is producing the skilled people aligned to what the country needs, aligned to what the municipality needs in terms of the skills. So we really think that the involvement of the likes of your DUT and other technicons, it's got to be taken very, very seriously. And then we also are worried about the alignment of and the coordination of a thinking. If you take the city, for example, we've said, look, the city says 30% asides, these set asides for empowerment, women, and so on and on and on, which we welcome, and it makes a lot of sense in terms of making a difference when it comes to the inclusive growth on the ground. But what's happening is that you find the civil society, because we really think that's where the civil society has to come in. The kind of riots we are getting on the ground, the jobs, the construction companies who are suffering, they cannot continue because of the stoppages, people are not being empowered, and so on and on and on. we definitely have got to find a way of ensuring that what the city says, what the country says, which as business have gone all out to make sure that we comply with, it's actually applied on the ground. And we really think that on that score, the issue of law and order, it's something which must really be taken seriously. Many people are of the view that we tend to tolerate criminals on the ground who are actually are hiding behind empowerment and so on and on. I really would like to impress upon you to make sure that law and order in general is taken seriously. If you look at some of the countries around the world, the reason why they've managed to keep people in check, you punish in the city even the smaller crimes, a person dropping the paper on the ground, because if you can detect that person dropping the paper on the ground and punish that, it means the bigger crime, you'll never lose sight of that. We think that our women and children must be in a position to wear their watches, necklaces, and be able to walk down the streets of eThekwini without being robbed. Today, I can tell you now, some people even take their natural hair. If you've been growing your hair, they come with a pair of scissors, just cut you cannot afford that kind of a situation if you are really serious about developing the city and make it a world-class city. In terms of the ocean economy, agriculture and agro-processing and other sectors which we've identified as the drivers of this economy, I've already taken much time, Minister and Mayor. I think I'd rather leave that to my colleagues from the Durban Chamber of Commerce, who are actually going to go into the details of that. In summary, Minister, that is, if we forget everything that I said earlier, management by objectives, targets, and timelines, skills development, law and order are issues that must be addressed and addressed urgently. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tembe. Can we request Mr. Nigel? Mr. Nigel Watt?
Thank you, Program Director, Minister, Honourable Mayor. Good morning and welcome. Like other speakers, I'll observe all protocols already mentioned. Thank you very much. Thank you, Minister, for the opportunity to once again engage with you robustly in Durban and talk about the key challenges that we face as a business community in this post-lockdown, but not yet post-COVID. We really appreciate your presence and your invitation here today to further engage. I'll be brief this morning and allow other people present to present, and I'll try and just articulate a couple of key things. Firstly, Minister, I must say, when you talk about COVID, you're right. We cannot afford to participate in the second wave. And not just through our chamber membership, but also in my role at Toyota South Africa, where we are employing almost 7,500 people. We talk about two things on a daily basis. The first one is we must be responsible, because as you rightly say, we are controlling COVID. We are moving COVID. So we have to be responsible so that we don't participate in the second wave. And more importantly, to business people, I'm telling them every day, during this COVID time, let's be courageous. We are moving into this new normal, and if we're courageous and do things that we traditionally wouldn't have done before, we can improve a lot quicker and with a lot more speed and resilience. Minister, I take very seriously what you say about empowering women and empowering the youth. I truly believe that that is the future. Changing to my Toyota cap very quickly, people often ask me, you build 1,000 cars there a day and you employ almost 7,500 people. What do you do? And I make it very, very clear. I don't build cars. I have two roles for Toyota. The first one is managing risk, and this year has been some exceptional challenges. But the one that excites me the most, and I talk about all the time, is growing or building or nurturing the next leaders. The next leaders are really, really important. Honourable Mayor, I'm really thankful for your presentation this morning because you've made my speech a lot easier. I think our notebooks are almost the same and our scorecards are the same, so thank you very much. There were 10 very specific key issues, Minister, when you visited here last October that were raised, and I'll go through them very, very briefly. First of all, top of probably many people's agendas is the port efficiency, the looting of the trucks along the N3, site invasions, infrastructure challenges, crime and grime in the city, the issues of informal trading taking place in Durban, the non-enforcement of bylaws in the city, non-payment, late payment of service providers by government, ease and cost of doing business, programs to develop rural township businesses as well as the youth. Those were the 10 key things that were raised in this venue with you, Minister, last October. So, briefly, how are we doing? I think that's what you'd like to hear today, and what are the new challenges. I think if we take a step back, and we all know what's happened since March this year, I think we're doing remarkably well. As many of the people have said earlier, not maybe as well as what we'd like to do, but if we consider the challenges, remarkably well. Mayors. From the port functioning point of view, some significant progress has been made on getting Durban Port to function in a manner that genuinely serves the economy and the business ecosystem of our city and our province. Businesses were incurring tremendous losses, and the Decongestion Committee is making good progress and is to be commended, although the pace is slower than what we would wish to see. But I know there's some exciting plans for the future. The Durban Chamber and Transnet have held regular meetings with port users to gain insight into the challenges faced. The passenger terminal and the surrounds are not as attractive as they should be, but the number one priority is first to get the cargo moving freely. The Bayhead congestion continues, but we know there are plans afoot to address this further. This said, the direction is good, and we need to continue to engage to make further improvements. Site invasions by illegitimate business forums. Durban businesses and projects are still being held hostage, resulting in work stoppages. Although it's very fair to say there has been a tremendous improvement, including rapid responses to such problems. Such elements cannot be dealt using a soft approach, and the safety and security of businesses, property, employees are constantly at risk. We need to find constructive solutions now rather than later. Large infrastructure projects are valuable to the city's future economic development in terms of yielding economic returns, and we need to ensure that we give ongoing investors comfort and insurance. Load shedding. The assurance we were given was that the corruption and mismanagement of Eskom was being addressed and being resolved. President Ramaphosa himself said he had believed Eskom had been specifically targeted in the state capture program. Load shedding has still come back to impact business this year, but I'm happy to say not to the levels we saw in 2018 and 2019. Political instability of eThekwini. This was raised in October last year. We requested that government step in and bring order quickly to regain our strong investor profile and the introduction of Mayor Kunda has resolved many of these issues and helped tremendously with this, in this regard. Thank you very much. Durban, as an inclusive city, is shining, with clear plans being executed on a daily basis. Corruption. The Durban Chamber acknowledges the city's efforts to tackle corruption and for introducing performance management principles, processes, and procedures into government. Corruption is a serious economic crime in South Africa that significantly exacerbates our social, economic challenges. I also want to be very fair today, and the Mayor reminds me of this regularly when we meet. Corruption is not just in the public sector, but in the private sector. And as the private sector, we all also need to take note of that and be responsible for that. Critical infrastructure. The Mayor alluded to many of the catalytic projects this morning that are gracing the horizons of our city and surroundings. The Go Durban project has been delayed in terms of the launch. We cannot afford to delay these large infrastructure investments any longer. The city needs to ensure that there's meaningful consultation with all stakeholders so that we can fast-track the process and the launch of the Go Durban project. Electricity tariffs. Whilst all sectors are vulnerable to tariff increases, the most vulnerable sector within our province and our city is the manufacturing sector. The Durban Chamber of Commerce and Industry's membership consists of some of the country's largest manufacturers, and excessive tariff increases will be detrimental to their operations and competitiveness, and drain their ability to grow business and create jobs. Many of these plants run on a 22 or 24-hour-a-day basis and are heavily dependent on electricity. We look forward to the procurement of power by municipalities from the IPPs. Some new items that we would like to raise today is in terms of business recovery for corporate SMEs and informal sectors. The Durban Chamber acknowledges and applauds the city's economic recovery plan. Sectors such as manufacturing, transport, logistics, SMEs, tourism, and construction, to name a few, have been negatively impacted because of COVID. Recovery plans have been put in place and need to be available to all, easy accessible, and ensuring sustainability so that we continue to restart the economy. Financing infrastructure also needs to be addressed. Crime and grime. The challenge we've had to deal with and continue to deal with as we tackle COVID has not helped in the area of improving crime and grime around the city. There have been significant areas of improvement, and continued public-private cooperation on a daily basis will ensure the high level of cleanliness, neatness are maintained. Greater emphasis and cooperation in the areas of effective enforcement of municipal bylaws, zero tolerance policing strategies, mobilizations of community support and joint ventures between public and private, and proactive reporting of infrastructure breakdown and urban decay. I'd also like to use this opportunity to thank the city leadership for the manner in which they handled the homeless during the COVID situation. And there's been some shining examples of what can be done, and we continue to see that. In closing, thank you for taking time from your busy schedule today to listen to us again. We value this. The Durban Chamber and its membership remains committed to working with the city and the province, as well as national structures, to ensure a better place for all. But more importantly, a place people choose to live, people choose to work, people choose to invest. This is, as the Mayor would say, unity of purpose. Thank you very much.
The word, and now we'll call upon Soli Suleiman from Minara, who will then be followed by Jablani Ngumalo from NAFCOC. Then the last speaker will be Mzwandile Mavula from Informal Settlement. Suleiman.
Minister Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, our Mayor, eThekwini Councillor Kaunda, our MEC for Education, our Speaker of eThekwini, councillors, managers, deputy managers, other representatives from eThekwini, representatives from the various chambers, businessmen and women, civil society unions, other guests, all protocols observed. Good morning. It is really my privilege and pleasure to address you this morning. And I think our two colleagues, both Moses and Nigel, have already done a brilliant job. But since I've prepared something, I think I'd rather go through this. But I want to thank both the Minister as well as the Mayor. What they've said today is exciting. And I think the most important thing is that all stakeholders, including business, have to work together to deliver. It is my privilege and pleasure to address you this morning. We are still held hostage by the pandemic that has wreaked havoc. And our greatest concern is the damage to the economy, as has been mentioned before, in our city, our province, our country, and of course, internationally. How long will this pandemic last? And how long will it take for a third world country like ours to recover is anyone's guess. While we have a second wave like the Northern Hemisphere, it's not as bad as the Northern Hemisphere. We all hope and pray that we do not have a second wave like the Northern Hemisphere. And I think the best part of, or the advantage we have, we're going into summer rather than winter. But of course, we hope that the vaccine will be available sooner than later. Will it have long-term side effects? That will only be seen when the vaccine is administered and over the next year or so. We commend our leadership in the manner that they've managed the pandemic. Our President, our Minister of Health, Minister Dlamini Zuma, have done a brilliant job. And the low levels of infection that we currently have is due to that leadership. But the bad news is that a large number of our people, our South Africans, are behaving as if COVID has waved us goodbye. And therein lies the danger. This complacency can be very, very dangerous. Government's intervention has been welcomed, but the PPE saga, the corruption has compromised government with the lack of checks and balances that should have been introduced, knowing full well dangers of allowing contracts to be awarded on an emergency basis, and the temptation and greed that is prevalent. And unfortunately, there is a me culture rather than a we culture. It seems in certain circles there are no concern for the destitute and the unemployed. The interventions by government have unfortunately been insufficient and in many cases poorly managed. For example, the TER saga, where many businesses were finding it difficult to access the funds. And of course, corrupt payments to certain individuals and entities, and even the dead. And this was really a joke. The COVID relief scheme via the banks, in my opinion, has been unsuccessful. Since banks have been very strict in providing these funds to distressed businesses. I mean, businesses are distressed, and they expect to have the same type of controls as they do when the businesses are doing well. And I'm sure that thousands of businesses that employ hundreds of thousands of employees will continue to close, and therein lies the danger. The businesses that survive will need years to recover with the damage that has been done to the economy, and will definitely need a lifeline. There has to be another way to distribute these relief funds, really. If you're going to depend on the banks, it ain't going to happen. There should be grant funding, in my opinion, which will allow a breather for these SMMEs, many of whom had no business and income during the lockdown. And right now they are struggling to get back on their feet. There is effectively no sympathy from the banks in this regard, beside the few months of latitude to repayments. People have been retrenched. Many have reduced income. Many industries and businesses will never recover. Poverty and not even there, you can't even blame them for not being able to do business. Poverty and unemployment has gotten worse. Tax income to the fiscus has already dropped, and many people are now off medical aid, and this list can go on and on. Government has to intervene, and I'm glad we've got the type of interventions that I've heard today, and I'm sure there are many plans, but the proof of the pudding is really in the eating. We need to see a difference in the marketplace. Many home businesses have approached our chamber for help, and of course, eThekwini has set up a wonderful grant scheme and this is a brilliant initiative. But at provincial and national level, the grant required has to be in 6 figures, ultimately. And maybe it could be in part grant and part low-interest loans. I need to comment on my business, more so because Minister Zuma is here. In 1997, government decided to open up community pharmacy ownership to provide pharmaceutical care in rural areas. Laws were promulgated without any restrictions, and today we are at a stage that white monopoly capital has been enabled to proliferate into the pharmacies across the country at the cost of the right to occupation of community pharmacists. This has compromised the radical economic transformation that is required to an extent that if this is not stopped, black pharmacists will be destined to always be employees instead of being employers. So something that has to be done in this regard, because pharmacists that are qualifying today may never ever become employers, and that's unacceptable. So entrepreneurship becomes a challenge. So I think we need the government has to basically intervene here. I have really mentioned this to our Minister Zweli Imkis, but we need to he's been too busy, of course, with the COVID pandemic, but we need to have interventions. The words that I remember when single exit price, so you got fixed price, it's single exit price, so really there's no competition in that sphere. When this single exit price was introduced, we heard that there will be no competition and the pharmacy in Soweto will be able to purchase medicines at the same cost as the pharmacy in Sandton. We need serious interventions to correct this injustice since it's really creating oligopolies. Chains and corporates are also entering townships, compromising the spaza shops, who are the foundation of the informal economy, and this is unacceptable. People on the ground need help. They need training, they need support, they need mentorships in order to empower themselves and create employment. Charity, of course, is not sustainable. So we hope that whatever has been said today, the interaction between government at the various levels and business bears fruit at some point or another. And this is something I'm hoping it happens. And of course, we as a chamber and we as business people are quite excited and happy to be involved. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much as we welcome Babu Jabulani Umalo from NAFCOC. And let me make a minor correction. I said Babu Mzwandile is from informal settlement instead of informal economy. So you will forgive me, Baba Mzwandile. So it's still called nama informal settlements, manje. So ngiyaxolisa kakhulu. Babu.
Thank you, Mshengu, Minister of MEC for Education in the province. We'd like to greet our mother, Minister of Traditional Affairs and Governance, Corporate Governance and Traditional Affairs, Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, Sashabulo Subone Makati Saksin. And also to greet His Worship, the Mayor of eThekwini Metro, Ubabu Mbimbi, Oles Kawunda, Umama Wezwe Tusi, the Speaker of eThekwini in her absentia, a business fraternity, chambers within our midst. I'm Jabulani Umalo, as the program director said. I'm representing NAFCOC, eThekwini Metro. First and foremost, I'd like to thank eThekwini Municipality to include us as NAFCOC in their programs. There's a program there that is called eThekwini Economic Council, of which I'm part of that. There are 2 of us there. And we are happy that eThekwini has done that, as well as the Department of MEC, Nomsa Dube, were also we take part in those departments. We thank them for that. NAFCOC is made up of many SMME sectors. NAFCOC is like a pyramid where there are thousands of SMME in the base, and it goes up like that, where you find that at the top, you find very few numbers at the top, but many are lying on the line base. We had people before, like Dr. Richard Maponya, and people like Patrice Motsepe. He was our president some few years ago. Those were the ones at the top, but the bulk of members are down there. So we'll need to engage with departments to help us, to help those that are in the bottom. Government, through their programs of economic building and promotions, is making good strides. Radical economic transformation is one example. So when we talk of radical economic transformation, we see that there's a problem, or there's something that missed the time it was introduced. Why are we saying that? Let's go deep in addressing what is meant by radical economic transformation. The interpretation meant by radical interpretation by the ignorance of this drive. There are negative interpretations down there that promotes thuggish behavior. We've seen projects, big projects, that have been stopped by people or by forums that were saying they are following the RET program, whereas they were not, because they failed to understand, they failed to interpret the word, the program, radical economic transformation. So I think the government has got a lot of work just to send information to cascade down to those people. Just these people think a 30% is 30% cash, whereas it's not like that. It's 30% of the work. So there's a lot of work that the government needs to do. We've seen big projects like in Hammersdale on N3. It was stopped for a long time. So we think, as NAFCOC, the way to pull ourselves out of this quagmire is to form consortiums. Because in consortiums, there will be many companies that will cut the cake. And in consortiums, it's easy for big companies coming in with small companies, and then the knowledge or the know-how of doing business is enhanced. So the big ones will show the small ones how to do business. And it's unlike when one person is getting a tender of 200 million just for himself. But in the consortiums, there will be maybe 10 other companies that will get money from that. So that is how we see it in NAFCOC, that no, let us urge government to rather use consortiums instead of this today's tendering system. Mr. Mayor, there are a few things that I'm going to touch on, especially eThekwini. Please try and go back and look at how these things could be done in a modern way. You find that in the township, there are potholes. And those potholes are there for for many months because you are following this PFMA system. Whereas, if you can come up with a program that a group of those people who are doing that thing in that ward or in that region, you must have them so that whenever there's a sewer that is spilling over, we don't go for a tendering system. We have a pool of those plumbers in that area. We have a pool of those contractors who can fix the potholes there and there instead of lying there for years, for months. In my area, from October last year, along the road, a sewer was broken. Up until today, I've got thousands and thousands now of reference numbers. Up until today, this sewer brokerage is not fixed. But if there was a pool, so in that area, it was going to be quicker and smart. So we're appealing to you, Mbimbi, ukuthi just please change a little bit some of those systems that you use in order for us all to have this better life for all. In closing, I would like to say that Northcock is trying by all means to engage in business in this city. One of the examples, we are part of the textile corridor. We're dealing now with the two districts, that is Herikwala, where we are going to get wool from, as well as Mkanyagute, that we are going to get cotton from, in order to feed the company that is manufacturing textile in Hammersdale. We've done with Herikwala last 2 weeks. We are going now to Mkanyagute before the month end to finalize how we're going to get raw material, how we're going to cotton, so that all those things could come to here and then start a factory, textile factory. And lastly, we are also, Northcock has also partnered with a big company called Inkanyezi, the ones that are going to make or construct a dry port in Cato Ridge. In fact, my national president was supposed to be here. So he's not here because he's preparing to meet the country's president, President Ramaphosa, tomorrow. So he was supposed to talk here, but because of those arrangements, he's not here. He's busy preparing for. They are going to the dry port in Cato Ridge tomorrow. So we are in business, but we are appealing to you, sir. Let us put more emphasis on that, as I said, in a pyramid. Those that are in the lower ranks. Thank you.
Thanks, Baba Uzwite. Minister, when Uzwite speaks about people who are disrupting projects, it reminded me that last year they threatened to disrupt exams because they wanted to transport exam papers. Ngabona ukuthi ngiwafica egcwele workshop eThekwini lamaphepha. Baba Umavula, it's over to you.
Ngiyabonga kakhulu umphathi wohlelo. Ngibingelele uMinister uMama uDlamini Zuma bingelele usodolopha weTheku ubaba uKaunda nabo bonke abakhona. Ngiyabonga program director ukuthi uyilungisile ngempela. Anginayo mandate kwi-informal settlement. Yeah, but even our sector is not as informal sector correctly. We regard ourselves as our sector is social solidarity economy, because this thing of being informalized as if we are mentally informal and we are not organized is discouraging us. With the advent of the new democracy in South Africa, the informal traders are now facing new sets of threats and challenges which need to be addressed if this sector is to grow and meet the challenges of new modern shopping centers that are being built in almost every corner, including, by the way, in our own black traditional townships, accommodating large retail giants such as Pick n Pay, Shoprite, and Spar. Because the large giants purchase huge volumes of products from the manufacturers, and they are thereby able to negotiate better prices and terms. Now, the small and informal trader with their micro purchasing powers simply cannot compete on prices against these giants. And this is resulting in the informal traders, hawkers, and spazzers losing business and market share to these national retailers, with many of them being forced to close down their businesses, resulting in huge job shedding in this sector. There is clear evidence which shows that as much as 50% of spazzers have already closed in some areas because of these national retailers entering their market. It is important to appreciate that these informal traders, spazzers, and hawkers provide for a recycling of revenue within their own communities, resulting in further jobs and wealth creation spin-offs. With the entry of these national retailers, however, this revenue that was being created and recycled within these communities is now largely being siphoned out of these communities. If this sector does not raise its standard of retailing and services, more and more of them will close down and shedding potentially hundreds of thousands of jobs in the process. Market research started by the Bureau of Market Research at UNISA in 2004 has shown that the important needs and requirements of this sector include access to and regular supply of a competitively priced product so as to enable them to compete effectively in the market. Distance and travel to supply, it's often a barrier. So the transportation and delivery of goods and stock is a huge need. Access to finance to purchase stock, access to finance to fund business infrastructure, to upgrade buildings, purchase equipment, e.g. fridges and other business infrastructure. Retail and business management training and skills development. Legal support in terms of conflicts with regards to trading rights and other support requirements, such as the banking services. Our plan is to provide for a range of meaningful development and support services aimed at growing the second economy into a viable, competitive, and sustainable sector of the SA economy. This plan is based on the three founding pillars: creation of business opportunities that can be exploited by small businesses within the second economy, as well as the unemployed. Examples include broadening the retail range by organizing traders into cooperative bakery, cooperative butchery, cooperative clothing, etc., etc. The second pillar is addressing constraints and the removal and or lowering of barriers that inhibit the market entry, as well as the growth and commercial sustainability of these traders in the second economy. The third pillar is to rise the standard of retailing and services provided by this sector so as to improve this sector's competitive position in the market. I mean, it is very interesting to note that independent wholesalers within the so-called formal sector have for many years faced the very same threats of having to compete against large retail giants such as Pick n Pay, Shoprite, and Spar. The same threats faced by the traders of the second economy today. Their solution to this problem was to form buying organizations to bulk purchase products directly from the manufacturers and producers. And it was through these buying organizations that these independent wholesalers were able to successfully compete and effectively grow their businesses. There are now a number of these independent wholesalers within the formal sector, such as the independent cash and carry, Clover, etc., etc. So the concept of forming buying organizations has therefore been well tested and successfully proven in the market. It is through a cooperative structure that we intend doing exactly the same, i.e. forming a large buying cooperative representing the traders of the second economy. Leveraging on this enormous buying power, the buying cooperative will bulk purchase products directly from the manufacturers and producers, and then make these products available to the informal traders at a competitive prices through a network of distribution depots or warehouses that must be established and located within every municipality. The concept of buying a cooperative, for it to succeed, it will harness the goodwill and support of government, manufacturers, suppliers, service providers, NGOs, and international role players. One of the major strengths of the second economy is its huge network of thousands of entrepreneur traders and retailers. Our primary strategy is to harness this sector's strength and to organize, develop, and upgrade this informal entrepreneurial retail network into an effective distribution and retailing channel to the consumer. I thank you.
Thank you so much to all the contributors. We are running really behind time because the program of the minister is continuing beyond this engagement. And in the interest of time, I will request that we take no further hands from the floor, with the hope that when you kune protest led by the minister himself that there is no voice from the women. So cela CEO bagasale ses represent us all, because we are all born of women. So awukhulumela nje esimame kuphela usikhulumela sonke CEO. So we'll give you a few minutes for the reflection. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Minister. You just put me on the spot, just like that. Good morning, Minister, Mayor, Umamu Speaker, MEC, the leadership of the business organizations, all protocol observed. I just think, from my side, just a few words of encouragement just from today is we appreciate the feedback, Minister, that you've given us today. And I think as the president of the chamber and the other chambers have actually pointed out today, there's a lot of good work that has actually come in since when you came in last. And since, of even the national roads, there's a lot of things that are going to be happening, and there's an MOU that is being signed with the province, and we'll start seeing changes, hopefully with the cleanliness of the national roads, which is like, the M4s, the M17s, and the N3s, and so on and so forth. So we'll be seeing all those kind of things happening. So at least we're seeing progress in a whole lot of other stuff. And also the business disruptions that have been happening. It's really, really encouraging that when we call the mayor's office or any of his officials, to be honest, or even SAPS, there's quick responses that they make sure that the things do get addressed. But as my other colleagues did say, we are really concerned that there is a big mushrooming of all of these things happening now more than ever. Every now and then, I mean, it's becoming a fashion, coming back. I mean, it slowed down a bit, but it's coming back now, and it's really becoming a big concern, especially for investors and other organizations. And also stopping, people from making sure that they invest. So we've got investors that say, we want to go ahead and do so many things, but we can't move ahead now because as we want to do things, now our projects are being stopped. And we really would like, we're happy to see that we're working together properly with government. I think even the comment of the last speaker that he's actually said, I think it's also very important that big business works very closely with the informal sector. We've taken his details, and I've also given him our card. And I think the comments that he said is very important that we sit around the table and see how both sectors can really collaborate. And I think it's always good to appreciate that even if we're all coming from the business community, we don't always get to sit around the table and talk, and really appreciate the city and government to get us in a position of meeting and understanding challenges from, a different side or different sector of the business, and how can we make sure that we move forward. Having said that, thank you, and we're really looking forward to the success of the district development model. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I will request that we only take the minister for the reflections and responses, at least in Sosala no Kaunda in next engagements, and then continue with my engagements. Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much. And let me express our appreciation really for all the comments that you've made. I think it has enriched what we want to do. And I will not comment on all of them because a lot of them are suggestions that we need to take forward. But I think it is important that we, just as we quote the Chinese on some things, we must also follow how they strictly plan. They do long-term planning, so as we're sitting here, they know what Beijing will be looking like in 30 years from now. And they know what it will be looking like in 2010, 5. And I think we must get into that habit of long-term planning, even if we start with 25, at least. But long-term planning is important. But long-term planning means you must know where this will happen when and stick to the timetable. And I think that's something that we must also instill in our planning. And because the Durban Metro is a pilot, the mayor, the province, and ourselves, we must get into that. And then have a meeting where we can say, this is going to happen this time, by who, and keep to that timetable. And if it's not kept, somebody must answer. So I think that's very important. And of course, the skills are something that are critical. And I'm glad that something is being done, but law and order must be. This thing of the forums is really a big problem. And I think if you can solve it here, it will assist, because it's now all over the country. It started here, but it has spread all over the country. And some of the big projects have been stopped because of that. So I think we all really have to put our heads together and work with everyone and explain that nobody gets 30% when there's a project. You do your work, because when investors come and they say they want 30%, then they say, okay, what work? They say, no, we want the money. So that's a problem. So we agree that that's a big area that must be looked at. But the progress that is being made, yes, we all agree it's not as fast as it should be, but we'll try and accelerate. I'm sure I'm speaking on behalf of the mayor and the champion and the speaker that we will accelerate. And this thing about zero tolerance about crime is very important, because if you allow petty crime, then you won't be able to deal with big crime. It's like my grandmother used to say, when you go to a shop and you buy and you're supposed to bring change. And that time when I grew up, it was not cents. Initially it was pennies. So if the change is 1 penny, and there were sweets like Zulu Motos, so you buy 4 for 1 penny or something. Then you come back, she'll say, where's my change? How, Gogo? It was only a penny. Where is it? And then she'll say, if I can't trust you with a penny, how do I trust you with a pound? I must be able to trust you with a penny so that I can trust you with a pound. It's the same. So I really agree. But I'm glad also that the business community, the big business, the medium, the small, medium, and the informal are going to come together, because it's very important to meet, hear each other, and help and support. And the question that was raised by one of the speakers about money circulating in a community is very important. I looked at a study some time back, I don't know what the figures are now, that in our communities, in some of the communities, money circulates maybe 19 times before it leaves, because they use the lawyers in the community, they use the shops in the community, they use the butcher in the community, they use everything in the community. Then in others, maybe 9 times. But in our communities, in the townships and in the rural areas, it comes and it leaves. Sometimes it doesn't even circulate once. You earn it and it goes to other communities. And so you are not able to build those communities. So I think it's things like that are important. And of course, new industries. I'm looking forward to the textile that's going to come out of that Hammersdale with the wool and coming from Herikwala and Kanyagute. I really look forward to that, not only seeing, but also using it. So all I want to really say is, for us, I've taken copious notes of the things you have said, because all of them are very important. We are going to incorporate them. Some I'll take to national, others will be here, but we'll all work together. But because eThekwini is a pilot, we are going to pay very special attention to it. Whilst the other districts will pay attention, but there will be specific attention here. Why? Because we need to learn lessons from the pilots to then deal with some of the challenges in other areas. So as a result, on Thursday, we agreed that we'll meet just for a few hours like we have done today, but every quarter, to check what has happened, see whether there is progress, what lessons, what problems, what needs to be unblocked if there are. So don't tire. We won't make them long meetings, just a morning. Last time we were here, this is where we were. Where are we today? What are the issues? So that's what we are going to do every quarter, starting from next year. So we will not reach what you have said completely, but we will start. So thank you very much. And thanks for giving up your early morning to be here. We appreciate it, and we accept that everybody here is here for, as the mayor and you have said, unity of purpose, to grow the city, not for its own sake, but for a better life for the people in the metro, rural and urban, but also a better life for the province and for South Africans. Thank you very much. And if I don't see you, enjoy the festive season with a mask, with your sanitizer, with social distancing.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. We will request Babu Unglumalo to see Moses Tole. Where is Moses? About those issues of sewer spillage. Moses naye ngalapha egcineni. So Moses, if you can usondela nje eduze kwaba Unglumalo nihlebelana ukuthi nizobonana kanjani. And with that, colleagues, we now coming to an end of our program. We'll request the speaker to render the vote of thanks, and after her, I will not be coming back to the program. We'll have Eric Applegreen, who will then make the announcement. Thank you so much from my side. Siyabonga.
Thank you very much, Program Director. Mafungwa Sewetu, the Minister for Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, His Worship the Mayor, Babu Mxolisi Kaunda. I also want to stand on the protocol that was observed by the Mayor. On behalf of the city, I want to express our gratitude to the Minister for coming to our city to check on our progress with the implementation of the district development model, which was launched before we had the COVID-19 pandemic. This pandemic has affected and delayed our progress a bit, but because of our commitment and collaboration with the different sectors of our community, we are forging forward. Our economic recovery plan has been discussed with all stakeholders and has been given a thumbs up. Minister, thank you for reminding us that we are not out of the woods yet, and we have to tread carefully in whatever we do. The minister said women need to be empowered. That is quite true, but even in this room, we see few women. We hope by the next time you come back to the city, Minister, this room will have more women in attendance. To our energetic mayor, we want to thank you for the presentation you made, which clearly indicated the progress we're making as a city in maintaining stability for our city to grow. I want to thank the participants in this important gathering and the contributions you have made, which also assist us as a city to pull our socks in doing our work and respect and maintain targets that we put. In fact, what we have just said is what our mayor always complains about, that civil servants like planning for a long time before implementation. But COVID-19 has shown us that we are able to plan and implement timelessly. I will make an example of the hospitals that we built in a short space of time. We have a war room as a city that sits on alternate Wednesdays, where we sit down and check on the implementations of projects timelessly. And if you don't do that, there's trouble for you. I want to thank everybody for working together in the quest to make Durban a livable city. On Friday, the 20th of November, the mayor is convening a meeting with SAPS, Metro, and our legal unit, as he is establishing a multidisciplinary team in response to the illegal work stoppages by the Illegal Business Forum. Go Durban will go live next year in May. Thank you very much for attending. It's still in the morning, let's go back to work and make the city a livable place. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, Program Director, Minister, Mayor, colleagues, leadership. Just to say a quick set, we're going to have a short tea break for 5 minutes at the back, and thereafter there will be a set of site visits that the Minister and the leadership will be participating in. So after a 5-minute tea break, we're asking all the leadership to proceed to their cars, which are on Walnut Road. You don't have to go into the car park. All the officials that want to accompany the leadership to the site visits, everyone will be going to the back of the Jewish Center here, Jewish Hall, where they will visit a homeless people's project and a drug rehab project at Belhaven. And from there, the groups will move. The minister and the mayor will proceed to Inchanga to the catalytic project site visits, and another group will go to Inanda, Phoenix, to the gender-based violence program. So, colleagues, and if you're an official, you want to go there with your own car, you're welcome to do that, but you're not going to be in the convoy. The shuttles and the leadership's vehicles will be escorted in a convoy to all the site visits, but if you're going in your own car, you'll go in your own time and your own program. So please, if you want to go on the site visits, I would advise you to rather leave your car here, go onto the shuttle. The shuttles will be going with the escorts to the site visits, and everyone will be back here for lunch between 2 and 2:30. That's our logistical program. So let's have a 5-minute refreshment break, and please proceed to the vehicles on Walnut Road and go to the site visits, and come back for lunch here at 2 o'clock. Thank you very much.